All right, guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Brand Builder TV. And I'm going to tell you, I think he's becoming my favorite a guest here.
And my favorite podcast here.
There you go, man.
Right back at you.
I'll tell you what, and on a serious note, what I believe the biggest reason is for me anyway, is Vahan, it's all about energy, right? And you could feel when somebody has that real entrepreneurial spirit and that energy. And we couldn't have come from farther away places, right, to get to where we're at. But you just know when you feel that energy. And for me, when I feel that energy, I just connect instantly because I believe
you have it too. That's why.
Being an entrepreneur, man, is really, it's about a lifestyle. You say whatever you want to me. It's all about the lifestyle, and you can feel when it's genuine. So I'm pumped for this episode because now we're going to go deeper, right, than we did on the episode before, and then the one before that, your Africa trip. So we're going to go deep on this one. So guys, listen, get your notepad out because this is real world stuff, not from a book, not theory. To me, theory gets in the way. Let's hear from the people that have been there, that have done it, and are currently doing it. So let me give them a little 30,000 foot view. So Vahan Yepremyan, did I say that right? Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Founder of and CEO of Yepremyan law firm in LA, and we would be here for at least 30 minutes if I start to go down the list of all the awards that this law firm has won. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even joking about that. So to say they are at the peak of their world is an understatement. And your awards show that. So kudos, man, for walking the walk. Again,
it's my team. I'm blessed to have an amazing team that's gotten me there. So,
and that's why you're there, right? That's exactly it. I love that. But I want to go deeper on this in this conversation today because so many, especially in the times we're in, you're going to be able to share with them in your real world experience, your real world wisdom, that contrast creates so much power if the perception is correct, right? If that and I'm such a big believer in this, Vahan, in my life and successful people that I've studied, that I've connected with, that I consider friends and associates, that chaos creates genius. To me, chaos creates genius, and I'm such a big believer in that. So all that being said, I want to go deeper into your other business that you have, right, in the film industry, and give us a little 30,000 foot view of how you even got there and what that looks like today.
Sure, my pleasure. Before I get there, just want to point out a couple of things you brought up. Interesting enough. One is how we come from different backgrounds and completely different upbringing and culture and everything else. Yet we have this commonality, this kind of familiarity with each other, and bond. And that's that entrepreneurial bond. And it's interesting how, as I look at my clients, my colleagues, my friends who are entrepreneurs, and they're so different. They're so different in each way, whether it's culture, it's religion, it's whatever it is, right? Yet they're so bonded together with this entrepreneurial spirit. And it's interesting how entrepreneurship really brings people together. And when you look at it, they're not that different though, because we have certain sets of values, principles that drives us, that define us. And seeing that same thing for example, in you, of what I see in me, that makes me feel closer to you, makes me feel like I know you, and makes you trust you, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We love to create, we love to think outside the box and innovate and question things and take chances and risks. We value growth over comfort. All these things that we have that makes us entrepreneurs. And again, entrepreneur doesn't have to be somebody who owns a startup or a company or a business. It could be your employee. You could be working for a company and be an entrepreneur in your own position. It's not what you do, it's how you do it, right? Entrepreneur, a lot of my employees are entrepreneurs, and which is why our law office has done so well. And I'm so fortunate and grateful to have them there, because they question authority, they take initiative, they're not afraid to fail. And as a CEO or someone who runs your company, you have to give them that room and space to do their own thing and create their own thing and fail sometimes and fail, have a safe place to make mistakes and take chances and grow as individuals. Because if they grow, their output grows and your company grows. And so it's interesting how entrepreneurship is one of those things that brings all of us together. And you look at other entrepreneurs succeed, and you look as like in admiration, like, wow, good for him. Wow, look what he's doing. And we get inspired and we get motivated, we get driven. Or somebody did this, so I gotta step up, I gotta do my thing. And we could be completely different people in any other aspect of our lives. But when it comes to this entrepreneurship spirit, there's so many values and principles that we share that really brings us together. And it's really interesting. And I've seen that you could be an entrepreneur in completely different fields and driven by completely different dreams and aspirations. Yet that spirit of entrepreneurship, of creating, of growth, of questioning, of working hard and seeing results, and all that stuff that really bonds us, and it's interesting that you brought that up.
I love that. Let me add a little, let me go a little bit deeper on that, because I love it, right? So, because this is going to bring the real fire now. Yeah. So what I love, I think it was Zig Ziglar said, right? Success leaves clues, or it was Tony Robbins' guy that taught him. I forget the guy with the white hair. Anyway, success leaves clues. Now, there's two things that you shared with us, right, that you are doing now, and I call them entrepreneurs, right? So they work within the company. Yes. But in order to have a team of entrepreneurs, right, it has to stem from the leader. It has to stem from the top, right? So when things go sideways, the leader has to take it on the chin. But at the same time, when things start to get successful, the leader steps back and says, you know what? Couldn't do it without my team. This is right. That gives me the chills, right? Yeah. So that success leaves clues, and there are no coincidences. And I'm also a firm believer that how you explained it was beautiful. And I want to go deeper on that. Is when you know. So when you meet somebody, right? Yeah. Different skin color, different religion, different part of the world, different gender. I don't care what different vehicle that you drive. I don't care what it is. There's still a brotherhood, a sisterhood when you know, and that's what I want people to understand. And I just wanted to go deeper on what you shared, because it's so important. And I love that you went where it's not just that traditional entrepreneur that people think about, right? It's that entrepreneur, right? If you want to, and Gary Vee says it perfect, right? It's knowing who you are and then reverse engineering it. So it's right. So he says, and he's so on with this. He says, the person at number 8 in Facebook, right, would be horrible number 1 in their own company. But because they know themselves, right? They're number 8, they're number 4 at Facebook or Google, right? Or Amazon.
Exactly.
And it's, before we get into what you're doing now, Vahan, let's go deeper. I want you to expand on this. your own level of awareness. How important is that?
It's everything.
Yes.
It's everything.
Yes.
Being aware of not only, some people focus a lot outwards and what's going on out there and what's going on, what is this person doing and everything else. We forget that everything that we see and everything that we process it through our own lens of whatever our mindset is, whatever our beliefs are, whatever our stories are. And so if you're not paying attention to that filter and you have glasses that are, for example, dirty, and you put them on, it doesn't matter what's going on outside. You could try to clean it up and change it and do whatever, polish it up. You're looking through dirty glasses, you're going to see something dirty. Yeah. And so first, before you start looking outward and see what's wrong with this and this needs to be changed and this needs to be, make sure that you're looking through a lens that's clear and clean without you're not bringing any baggage and luggage into it, And so being aware of how am I looking at this? And because everything's really neutral. Things that happen don't have much meaning unless we give a meaning to it based on whatever our story has been, our beliefs are, and then whatever meaning we put to it, then we have an emotional response to it right back to us, and it reflects it back to us. And so being aware of what your limitations are, being aware of how you show up and how you process that information. So because things are things, but you decide what they mean. And somebody failed, okay, or somebody did something that didn't work out. For example, your employee, is he a bad employee? Is he not good enough now because he did something wrong and so he needs to go because it's his fault? Or is he somebody who's taking chances and trying to make things better and is pushing your company forward by trying different things, thinking outside the box? Or is he someone who didn't have the right setup or the tools, or you haven't given him the right authority or whatever to do the right things or do it in a way that he doesn't fail? And so you need to look at yourself before you look at the outside, your business, because your business is a reflection of you. And you cannot change the reflection without changing the person that's projecting the reflection. And being self-aware and awareness of who you are, what your values are, and what are your stories, and what's serving you and what's not serving you. And again, if you get rid of all your limiting beliefs and all this, negative self-talk and everything else, which we never really get rid of it, but kind of take it under control and manage it, right?
Right.
And be aware of it more and more, most importantly. Doesn't mean that makes you an amazing entrepreneur and you're all of a sudden going to succeed and you're going to have these, $1 billion company. That just gives you a better chance. It gives you better options to choose from, because all of a sudden, because you don't have those limiting beliefs, there's more to choose from. There's more options, more possibilities for you, right? And so you just kind of giving yourself a boost, a better chance. It's like running a marathon with 2 heavy suitcases of rocks, or running without them. This is the luggage that you bring in from the past relationship, from the past beliefs or things that happened to you that you've now formed certain view of. It's like a projector. You take something from the past, and you project it onto your future. And so something happened in the past, and all of a sudden, everything that happens moving forward, you look through that event and the meaning you gave to that event. And so being self-aware is everything. It's the beginning of everything. It's the place to start, because once be self-aware and not only I have a couple of really good friends who've gone through certain profession. One of them has gone through med school and he's extremely bright and extremely gifted and amazing human being. And he's a doctor and he's serving. He got to a point where he thought, you know what? I never really wanted to be a doctor. My parents wanted me to be a doctor. There was some pressure of, my dad was a doctor and there's, some other doctors in the family. And I kind of grew up in that environment. I was just always expected to. And I start looking at it. And he start looking at himself and become kind of self-aware of, who he is and how he wants to serve the world. And it was somewhat different. And he's looking back now, years and years and years of studying and hundreds of $1,000s of debt.
Right.
And now he's just kind of realizing that this is not something he wants to do. So before making major decisions, whether you're starting a certain education, or you're starting a new company, or you're leaving a job, or you're joining a new firm or company, being aware of what are your values, what's important to you, what are you looking for as in quality of life, and what do you have to offer, and what do they have to offer to you, and that determines a lot of those decisions, and it will save you so much heartache and headache and everything else if you do that before you start, And so maybe awareness is not everything, but it's the beginning of everything. So it should be as like a starting point where once you're aware, that doesn't solve everything, but now you're looking through at least some clear lenses, and then moving forward, make those decisions, and things can change, and you grow, and you change as a person, right? We all do. And your perceptions might change. That's fine, as long as you stay aware of those and say, okay, I'm not that person anymore, or I'm here now. I came to this country as a refugee, and as an immigrant, American dream, land of opportunities, which it is. And, especially from where I came from, which is Soviet Union, censorship, oppression, everything the opposite of
communism, right?
And, what's that?
Communism.
Communism,
yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah.
So my natural reaction was, I'm coming to this land of opportunities. What can I get? What opportunities can I take advantage of? What can I do to kind of advance myself and do this? And that's great. And that's what drives a lot of, especially immigrants who come here for a better life. Some point I outgrew that mentality. And I got to a point where instead of what can I get from out there, from the opportunities, from the economy, from the country, from the clients, from whatever, you switch it to what value can I bring to it? The quality of your answer depends on the quality of the question, right? And so how do you, it changes, it's a slight, because you're still doing the same thing, but your focus is different from getting to giving. And it has a whole different energy to it. And when you focus on delivering value instead of focusing on what am I getting, the get will come no matter what. If you deliver enough value to someone who needs it, the other stuff will be taken care of.
It's law. Yeah.
It can be, sooner or later it will. And if you want $1 billion company, solve a 1 billion people problem, right? And so it's give and take. Whatever value you bring in and whatever value you deliver to whatever number of people, in proportion to that, you will get compensated. And so being aware of what's driving you and what are your priorities, what are your values, and how do you look at the world also changes energetically how you interact with the world, with your clients, with your team, with yourself. So yeah, awareness. And this is my main thing of bringing personal growth and personal improvement to the world of entrepreneurship and business, because that's something that's not really discussed in business schools, in business books, and in, they teach you how to read, which is great. And you need to know how to read, balance sheets and profit and loss statements and cash flow statements and, do all that stuff, right? You need to know the language of the business is numbers. You need to know your numbers. You need to know your cash flow and all that stuff. The technical stuff is there. But being self-aware of the person who's looking at those numbers, somebody can look at the numbers and say, oh my God, I'm never going to get out of this hole. And, and we'll talk about my Ketchup, my film company, which is called Ketchup Entertainment in a minute. And the ups and downs we've gone through, and mistakes we've made, and quote unquote failures we've had, and struggles. At any point we could have quit. you know, and looking at it differently, saying, all right, that was an expensive lesson. That was something that we will not do again. And you know, okay, so how do we dig ourselves out of this hole? And so again, that's the person deciding how to face the challenge. Do you overcome it? Do you run away from it? Do you give up? Do you blame somebody else? Do you know? And so being self-aware, knowing yourself and knowing how you deal with in challenging times, it just gives you so much resilience. This is why a lot of times when you, you know, whether it's Shark Tank you watch, or, you know, one of my clients used to take me to this real life Shark Tank type of thing we have in LA, where there's investors and entrepreneurs get together and the entrepreneurs pitch. And mostly was tech related stuff. And they would pitch their project, and right there, people will talk. And then if anyone is interested, they'll kind of go to the side and start discussing. And, you know, it was like twice a month. So I went for a while, and a couple of my clients were investing in those things. And it was interesting to see how the way these successful investors think is they don't necessarily invest. Yes, idea has to be there, or the product or something has to be good, but they really invest in the person, in the entrepreneur, because that product or that service, by the time it goes to the market, it might be a whole different product, a whole different service, or even once it goes in there, you'll have to go back and change. So they don't necessarily fall in love with the product. Yeah, product is promising. Yeah, it has to have certain qualifications and requirements, and the needs and demands and the margins, and, you know, what is the production demands, all that stuff, right? And so you look at those kind of technical essentials, but more importantly, who are you that's running, that's going to take my money and you're going to apply it to this? How do you think? How do you function? How self-aware are you? Who's your team? How have you gathered your team, and how do you interact with your team? That is more important, because in one venture might not go well, and then the second will go well, and how do you pivot, and how do you fall forward and learn from that, and you know, you lose money here and then you make money there. And so it was interesting to see how they, as much as they asked about the products and services, they asked about the person. You know, what was your, you know, biggest failure you've had, and whose fault was it? You know, and just to see if they're going to take responsibility for it, and how did they process that? Was that a lesson? Was that this? And has that changed the way they do? You know, and ask about their team, and who are they, and how are they connected, and responsibilities and everything else. And it was interesting, fascinating to see how, you know, you would think, okay, yeah, this is a great product. Wow, it works. And to just really forget about the person and really dive into that. But he was like, okay, that's great. Now let's talk about you. Like and one of the important things I think with entrepreneurs is the why. And this is something that they would also ask, like, why are you doing this? What's driving you to create this company? And because, you know, you look at statistics, 95% of the ventures fail within the 5 years. So you're walking into this ring as a gladiator, knowing that most of you are going to be dragged out, you know, ripped apart. And yet you go in there because you're a fighter. And so you need to have a really compelling why that's going to get you through those scary times when you're being attacked and when you're fighting, and not run away, say, what, forget this, I don't need this, I'm going to go and get my job back, or I'm going to apply for a job, I'm going to do something easier. But when you have this compelling why that you're not pushing, it pulls you towards your, it's again, energetically, it's different. Pushing is different. Being pulled is different. And so they would ask about, what's your why? Like, why are you doing this? And really get into it. And I think that makes a huge difference. When I was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, as we talked previously, I'm big on charities and giving back. And so one of the organizations that I was involved in, and still am, and wanted to promote an awareness of, was Feed a Billion. And it's an organization that provides meals around the world. And instead of setting up their own, they basically raise funds and provide meals to the local entities that are already set up there and able to deliver them efficiently and quickly to the families and communities that need it. And their goal is to feed 1 billion people. And so I had their t-shirt on as I'm climbing the last day. And, last day is the toughest day. It's like 6 hours of climb at night. It's dark, it's cold, it's half the oxygen and all that stuff. Everything's bleeding, nose, ears, and you just don't want to take another step.
Right.
And one of my whys was, I need to get up there and I need to take a picture with this thing. I've been carrying this t-shirt for 5 days, and I've promised them, like they sent it, like they FedExed the t-shirt to me like 2 days before I was going to go, just so I could have it in time. And all of a sudden, me being up there, just kind of making it all the way to the top and taking a picture was not so much important as this why that, look, I promised to them, and I need to, this might help, serve extra 100 meals or extra 1 meal to somebody. And that really pulled me a lot more than it was just like, I should really make it. I've come this far and I should really make it. And so whatever your why is, make sure it's more than, I want to make a lot of money so I can have a big house or a nice car or nice vacations. Because when things get tough, and things do get tough, whether it's your business, whether it's economy, whether crazy things like this, they happen. And what do? Do you run away? Do you say, what, I don't need this anymore? Or is it, no, there's this big enough why that, I need to do this. I need to do this despite of all this difficulties, because there's a bigger why. And so investors want to know for a reason, because they know the people who have that bigger why get through those difficult times. And so their money is in a safer hands, in a better hands with somebody who has a bigger why. And so as you're setting up your company, and even if you've already set up your company and you haven't really thought about it thus far, and financial security, it's important, especially someone who has family and kids and parents or whatever, and you provide, that's a form of contribution, and that's a form of service. And that is very important. But it's not about the money, right? It's about what that money allows you to do, whether it's, give them more comfort or give them more security or give you more time with them or whatever. And so just know why you're doing it. You're not doing it. Money is just a tool. It's not the end result. Focus on, I want my family security. I want my, kids to be better off or live in a better neighborhood, whatever it is, right? And so, and during those tough times, that's when you look at the why. It's like, why, even if it's something that you need to prove to yourself that I can do this, and I know I can do this, and I've meant for this, and I'm not going to give up. I'm going to prove to myself that I got it in me. And this is why we do a lot of these challenging things, whether it's, climbing and diving and jumping off planes and all that stuff, because just push our limits and see if we have it in ourselves. And same thing in the business. And so knowing yourself, self-awareness, again, going back, and knowing within that your why, or why are you an entrepreneur? Why do you do this? There are people who, because this word of entrepreneurship has become a very kind of a popular buzzword.
Very popular.
Everyone's an entrepreneur.
Very.
Right?
Just look at the social media profiles.
That's
everybody and their mother. Right?
That's it. We have a book coming out, and a discussion with the publisher was, and it's about entrepreneurship and beliefs and this mindset and everything else. And we discussed about, should the word entrepreneurship be there? And it's become such a buzzword that it's so commonly used and misused that it no longer really means anything. Mm-hmm. Everything's an entrepreneurial, and everyone's an entrepreneur, and everything is entrepreneurship. And so what does it mean to you? And who are you, and why are you doing whatever you're doing, And so start with that. Start with self-awareness. And what an amazing time right now, as you're stuck at home, you can't do anything.
Right.
Start with that.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And to go even deeper with you on the self-awareness is it maps back to, and everything we're talking about, guys, is they feed off of one another, right? There is no there is no actual 1, 2, 3. That's the beautiful thing about it. And that's what we love about it, because it becomes our oxygen, right? We need that. But to go a little deeper on the self-awareness, is what that allows you to do is what I consider business 101. And that is, when you become self-aware, and the more self-aware you become, as you start to grow, expand, and move forward, what that allows you to do is what I consider success in business 101. And it came back, it bit me on the business that I crashed to the ground, is knowing who you are, what you bring to the table. So now you can reverse engineer that with the people and the systems, right? So that you, with your weaknesses, so you can't, how can you know your weaknesses without understanding who you are, right? Without understanding who you are. And then now you could triple down on your strengths when you have those people. And I believe that is, look, we could talk about stats, right? And nobody's going to know more stats than you when we're talking about businesses, startups, and you don't have enough capital. You don't have this. You don't have that. You know, but then there's also plenty of businesses that figured it out, right?
Right.
That go against the stats.
Right.
But here's what I promise you. The ones that did find their way through to the other side figured out how to enhance their weaknesses so they could triple down on their strengths. That's just, and then and your case in point with this, from what you share with us on the last show, is now that you get that foundation under you, now that you become successful, now how do you scale, right? How do you now get a life, right? How do you, and you shared that with us, right? Again, the defining what you consider quality of life, right? Some people like me, it is work, right? I love it. I love it. It's my lifestyle. But
and it shows.
But you had to figure out, listen, okay, we have this great foundation. Now we're at the point where I need to start to identify, what do I consider quality of life? I have a little girl at home, right? I have this at home. I have that. So now, if you didn't understand yourself, right, you're going to keep running into that wall. And here's what I believe. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not, I didn't even graduate high school. Okay. But here's what I believe, being on this earth long enough, is the reason that people 40, 42 years old, 45 years old, most men go through a midlife crisis, right? It's simply because they don't know themselves. They haven't taken the time, right? And now, but here's the caveat to that. I want people to understand, when you start to get to know yourself more and more into your 40s, mid 40s, you might have to make some real courageous decisions, right? Yeah. But that's okay. That's okay, because you're moving forward. One other thing I wanted to circle back on that you talked about is, 2007, I was down in Florida with Bob Proctor, and he taught me this.
I love him. I actually had a chance to meet him.
Oh my God. Two things he told me that I'll take with me to my grave is, and we're going to circle around what you said, is he said to me, son, I want you to understand the difference between giving and trading. So what do you mean? He said, when you trade, you give and expect something back. When you give without expectation. And he said, I want you to understand this. And he was 2007, he's probably in his mid 70s at the time. He says, I can promise you that when you give without expecting, it comes back tenfold in 10 different ways, right? The other thing he left me with, and I always got to share this,
that's amazing.
It's gold. He says, son, you don't need to slow down. You need to calm down. I said, yes, sir.
Yes.
That's what he used to tell me. So, but giving and trading, two different things. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused, right? They confuse giving and trading. And there is no coincidences that we both give to our favorite nonprofits, and we both have a list of those nonprofits that we support. And again, any successful business owner, entrepreneur, it's the same recipe, right? Just different ingredients.
Yes.
It's the same recipe, just different ingredients. It's because we've been taught by the greatest classroom it's life. Life is the greatest. That's why I bet you, Vahan, if we lined up those entrepreneurs that were in those pitch meetings, right? And tell me if you agree with this. I believe, and I promise people that 100 out of 100, if you ask them this question, when you decided to go into business with that person and you based it on that person and not the product or not the whatever it is they had, did you learn that from a classroom or did you learn that from life?
Right. Yeah.
What are they going to say, Vahan?
Well, if they're just focusing on the product, that's classroom. If they're focusing on as much as on the person, it's life. It's you learn to read people. You learn to, it's part of that experience, and you see day in there, and you'll keep learning it until you things will come up until you learn it. You know,
life's a trip, isn't it?
Yeah,
It'll keep putting you right back in that classroom, right?
That's it. It's interesting that you brought up, self-awareness and success, because we often talk about how entrepreneurs deal with failures, because there's a lot of challenges, how they deal with challenges and missteps and everything else. Not enough about success as well, because that also, like, what happens when things go well? Who do you become somebody else? Do you sabotage yourself because you don't feel like you're good enough, you deserve it, or it's not going to last, or do you become? And so that's self-awareness comes in not just when you're starting or when you're facing challenges, but when even things are going well, or sometimes in your perception too well. There's like, you start questioning, like, is this going to end? Is this going to, and then you start pulling back and you start changing energy, the way you've been doing that got you there in the first place. And then all of a sudden things come back. And then it's like a cycle. It's like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. And then it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And so being aware of who you're being, and, because as an entrepreneur, before you focus on what you're doing and how you're doing, is again, this comes back to being self-aware, is who are you being? What kind of an entrepreneur are you being? What kind of a human are you being? What kind of a CEO or father or brother or husband or whatever you're being? Because the way you do anything is the way you do everything, right? And so the way you treat one person it says a lot about you, and how you do this and how you do little things. This is how you do the big things. And so being aware of not only when things are challenging, okay, I'm gonna, persevere, but okay, things are going well. What am I gonna do with this? How much credit do other people get? How much, who shares with you in that success? How much do you give back? What happens next? Some of us, and I've been guilty of that, is sometimes playing small, or when things get to certain levels, like, okay, this is good enough. I need anything more, and start kind of pulling back a little. And so we all have that. And so being aware of that, and not limiting ourselves, or not judging ourselves, or not bringing in some of that, again, baggage and luggage from the past, is important. So yeah, absolutely. Like, when things are going well, or things are you're succeeding, self-awareness is just as important when things aren't, And it's interesting, you mentioned earlier, as we first started the conversation, about chaos, and how that's a good thing. A lot of people think chaos is a bad thing, but I absolutely agree with you. I think when there's chaos is when you start questioning things, when you start looking at things from a different, because when everything's kind of in place, you kind of just assume that's how things need to be, and that's how they are, and that's how they've been, and you kind of go on. When there's chaos, you start questioning everything. Like, what's happening and why is this happening and why is this not here and there? Should this be here? And so it gives you a chance to reevaluate everything, whether it's your business or how it's going and how you're showing up and everything else. Like right now, we're in chaos. You know, we're all going through this together. I've never been through pandemic. I've never been through a total economic shutdown. So I have no idea.
Yeah.
Right. I could sit here and say, be calm, everything will be fine. And I truly believe that everything will work out and things 100%. Will be fine and we'll 100%. Come out of this, you know, especially United States, such a resilient country. And we're as people are very, very tough and have that grit that gets us through a lot. But again, I haven't been through this. And so we're all going through it together and we're all trying to figure things out together. And so, you know, as I'm sharing some of my thoughts and everything else, just know that, like, you know, I'm not sitting somewhere where I could see further than you. And I'm not, you know, predicting things that I already know how it's going to, I'm going through the whole mess and chaos with everybody else and trying to figure out what the next day is going to look like. It's just like you said, and like Bob Proctor said, is just calm down.
Yeah.
Making decisions from centered place, calm place is so important. And I think one of the things that really helps me is meditation. Whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 20 minutes, there's people who meditate for longer, and I wish I could. I usually get 15 to 20 minutes, but
that's
I know people.
That's it. That's all you need, though. Honestly, right? That is all you need. Let me do this. Let's go back a little bit, because I think I always, when you're talking, my mind is thinking like, okay, what questions, right, is somebody asking? So 2 things that I want to go deeper on that you talked about is, first of all, self-sabotage or questioning yourself or losing that confidence for a certain period of time, right? Being human. They're saying, okay, Vahan, you have these multiple businesses, you're very successful and you got a lot going on, but when you're telling us now you're hitting this wall, how do you deal with that? And I want to share with them, again, success leaves clues, right? So some of the most successful businesses and entrepreneurs surround themselves with the right people and attract. That's why there's board of directors, right? Yeah. That's why there are, again, self-awareness now allows you to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, right? Yeah. And will give you the real, right? Yeah. Will say, Vahan, listen, this is where I think you're going wrong, or hey, this is where I think you're really winning, right? When you have that real input that you can actually lean on. And let's give an example, right, of how that can go sideways. Look at some of the biggest entertainers that surround themselves with yes people. Yeah. What happens? They implode, right? They lose their self-awareness. They lose their direction. The compass is thrown up in the air and they just, right? They buy into non-reality, you know, and so board of directors, and I'm just using that as a term, but surround yourself with your own board of directors. That's going to give it to you real. Yes. You know, I think that's so important.
100%. And even for those people who say, well, how do I get those people? Or I don't have the resources, or I don't have the connections. 2 things. One, this board of directors or surrounding yourself with the right people or the right knowledge it could be the right books. It could be the right lectures. It could be the right podcast. It could be the right, and board of directors. I have imaginary board of directors for some of my companies, where these people that I know or I know of are not even, they don't even know they're on my board of directors. Right. But I ask myself, how would this person act in this situation, from knowing him or from reading his books and biographies and everything else? Well, how would they deal with the situation? How would this person look at it? What would their response be? And again, you're tapping into this, their experience. So if you have people around you that have been in business, you know, each person, let's say 10 years, and you have 10 people, you have 100 years of experience right there. and you'd have to go for 100 years of yourself to get that knowledge and experience. All of a sudden here in one day, you could gather them and be there. And people are, you'd be surprised how willing they are to lend an advice or a word or share their knowledge more than you think, especially the people that you want, the right people are the ones who are willing to, people who are closed off to that, you probably don't want their advice anyways. And so, so if you reach out and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm running this, I'd push you, you'd be surprised. And I've had people reach out to me as well. And I've had conversations and I've had some emails going back and forth, and you'd be surprised. And so reach out. And if it's not in the form of a person, it could be a book, it could be a lecture, it could be, there's so much content now there that there's really no excuse for you not to be surrounded by information that will help you, analyze situations and make an educated and conscious choices and decisions. And so 100% having the right people, the right team, and couldn't agree with you more about the yes people. And entrepreneurs have that too. There's a lot of egos involved in businesses and startups. This is my company. This goes the way I say it, and I've started it. I'm, right? Especially as things start getting better and growing, it's like, I did this, and it's easy to get people to agree with you and look up at you, and then whoever disagrees, then they don't know what they're talking about. It is so important to have people who disagree with you in the room with you. People who are going to challenge you, people who are going to question whether they're right or not, because it just makes you pause. And even if your decision was right anyways, now you know why even more, because you're just trying to explain. And just having those people who, employees need to be empowered, need to be educated, need to be supported, instead of pushed down and taken advantage of and used, because they are your business. If you're taking advantage of them, you're taking advantage of your business. And there's this thing about how this vice president asks his president or the CEO, it's like, oh, well, what if we train him and he leaves? He's talking about one of the director or like one of the managers that he's going to go through this extensive training and acquire a lot of this knowledge. And he says, what if we go through all that stuff and we train him and then he leaves? And the CEO goes, what if we don't and he stays?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we have somebody who's not trained and doesn't know anything, is in the company. How much damage? That'll do more damage than somebody who you uplift. And, I've had number of staff leave our firm to go on to law schools. They come in as legal assistants or paralegals, and they kind of get motivated and inspired to move on and go to law school, and really support that. And it's amazing because some of them have come back, and some of them work with us, and some of them send us clients, and because they're practicing a different law. And so it's supporting them and supporting, we have this thing that I've actually learned from Mind Valley. It's a company who's now become a client as well, but I'm friends with the owner, Vishen Lakiani.
Amazing,
it's an amazing company, and he's one of those entrepreneurs that someone can learn a lot from, and I have learned a lot from him. Not only what he puts out there, but also how he runs his company. And one of the things he does is the 3 questions that he asks his employees, and it's kind of shared amongst them on what dreams they have and personal stuff that to get to know and support each other. And I've kind of borrowed that from him as well. And we did that. And so, you see somebody who is, one of things on their bucket list or dreams is to go to Italy, and so it's Christmas time. Maybe you get them a travel guide to Italy and kind of support that, or give them certain, so it's kind of connecting them more than just, here's this thing you need to do, is your job, and is it done or not, so that they feel like they're a person. They're not like a machine who's just and agreeing on everything. And so surrounding yourself people who think independently, and you select carefully who you bring in, you know. But once you bring them in, that you've decided that they're smart enough and trustworthy enough to do their job, you need to give them that room and that space to grow and try and do whatever they're going to do, and let them kind of do their own thing rather than just keep kind of on top of them. And so and demand that they agree with you. And so yeah, it's 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's talk about this on a quantum level. Let's talk about this on a spiritual level, right? What that does is when you, as a leader, hold them back, don't do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, right? Or a laundry list of other things in that world, right? Here's what that maps back to. That maps back to fear.
Yeah.
And in the quantum field, in the quantum level, in the energy level, you can never win in that fear-based mentality.
You're projecting lack. You're projecting,
weakness, lack, unsure. So now that comes back to you, right? So when you can support that person, here's what one of my main thing, if you ask me, Vahan, what do I look for in a business partner, in a business associate, in a friendship, in a intimate partner, it comes down to this: pure intention. If the intention is pure, that's everything else can be fixed. Everything else can be enhanced. It comes in, and here's what I love about that, right? Is, again, I love to tell people, let the universe do all the heavy lifting. Here's the deal, right? Our two strongest parents ever in our life is, don't screw with Mother Nature. You're never going to win. And Father Time always tells the truth, right? Yeah. Father Time. So when you feel that energy that is working for you at that moment, you bring that employee on. For whatever reason, it didn't work out the way you thought, right? You just keep moving forward with that pure intention, that the people and the circumstances start to unfold in such a natural way, because you're in that courageous energy field, not in that fear, right? Not in that fear of what if, right?
And
so
it's
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So to me, it's really about, and where does that map back to? Your own level of awareness. Yeah. Right? There's no coincidence, right? And all we're doing, Ron, is we are sharing what we've been taught, what we've learned. And that's why what you said in the very beginning of this show, I want to put neon signs around and neon arrows. At the end of the day, personal development, the quantum field, energy, it is an absolute tragedy that it's not taught from day one. Yeah. It's a tragedy, right? That it's not taught from day one, right? Because numbers, right? Spreadsheets are very important, but you know as well as I do, you can fill those spots if that's not your strength, right? You can fill those spots to read those spreadsheets, to crunch those numbers. And I'm telling you from real world experience, because that's not my world, right? Yeah. You can, but to not share and teach a kindergarten, first grade, second grade, build that foundation of your self-awareness, your self-image, and the quantum field, I think, is a tragedy.
And you know what? It shouldn't even start from business schools. It should start much earlier.
Kindergarten, first grade, right?
Yeah.
Let's figure out that foundation. You know, I believe that the greatest gift that any adult can give any child, whether it's your child or not, is a bulletproof self-image, because you're going to teach that child that they can fish for themselves. Nobody has to fish for them, right? Self-image is to me, it's everything. It is absolutely maps back to everything. I love that, man. So let's dive into your other entrepreneurial journey, and give us that 30,000-foot view, because I love to be able to give a little bit of overview so people can jump right in. So share with Ketchup Entertainment.
Ketchup Entertainment. So it started off about 10 years ago.
Wait a minute. Why ketchup?
You know what?
We got it elephant in the room.
And I should really come up with a really good, sexy story. But as we're putting the company together, and we had to put it fairly quickly because things happen unexpectedly pretty fast, we start looking at some kind of conventional names, and a lot of them were taken or similar and everything else. And I think we were at the restaurant with my partners, and there were condiments and stuff. And so we looked at as, the meals there, we're coming in and making something a little better, and we're making something, like we're adding value to something that's already there. And so we start kind of playing with that, and we're able to use ketchup, because ketchup, usually people's like, how do you even use ketchup? Isn't that a company? But company is Heinz. Ketchup is the actual the product. And so since it's not in the category of foods, we're able to use it. But so it started 10 years ago, where a client of mine, a new client, comes into me that was referred to me to do a deal. He was trying to do a deal with a Russian company, and I speak Russian just because where I come from. Yeah. And so I kind of quickly looked at it, and it was one of those looks too good to be true deals. So I said, look, before you really retain me, we really dive in and you invest a lot of money, let me just, look into it, make a couple of phone calls. And fast forward, sure enough, that was nothing there. And it turned out that he's a film producer, that he's from UK, and he's done some films over there. And he said, look, I'm actually getting ready to produce my first film in the US. So I need to set up a company, and I would love to actually, if you're interested in doing more than just the legal or business side of it, come in, partner up, and we'll go off and make this film. And the truth is, when I was applying to law schools back in the day at USC, they have a really good film school. I actually had both applications. I had the film school application and the law school application.
Wow.
And I was very close to going the other route.
Wow.
And then I start talking to people who had graduated from film school, and the challenges with financing they're facing to do their first film, and going to family and strangers and borrowing money and asking for money and all this stuff. And it just seemed like, and I don't like to ask money from other people. So I was like, I don't know if that's the route I want to go. And I ended up doing the law school, but initially the motivator for law school was I wanted to get into diplomacy in international law, and which is how I ended up in law school. Worked out differently, and, setting up my own firm. But so that was always there. I was like, if it's meant to be, I'll come back to that at some point. And I kind of just left it. And so sure enough, we came back full circle, and he said, it's thinking about low budget film, and if we can, we'll self-finance. And so I brought in our third partner, who is a close friend of mine and a partner in some other businesses. He's a numbers guy. So I said, look, you got the creative side of it and experience and in entertainment stuff. I've got the business and law and entrepreneurial side. And then this is a numbers and finance guy. And so I think this will make a good team. And so we went off and made not a very good film, to say kindly. It was very low budget. We're in the middle of nowhere in Effingham, Illinois. Great cast, great crew. Had a blast making a film. It was a comedy slasher. We're shooting mostly at night, and so it took a lot of energy, because when you're low budget, you do everything yourself.
Right.
Craft services, permits, wardrobe, it's all on you. You don't
valet parking, right?
Valet parking, everything. I didn't have assistants. I didn't have nothing. It's like you are everything. I was my own assistant, and then I was the assistant of my own assistant. Funny enough, our wardrobe and hair, we had a makeup person, because it was a comedy slasher, so there had to be blood and all that stuff, right? but the hair and wardrobe came from Walmart, nearby Walmart. So we went in and just, that's how low budget it was, right? So we made the film, we had a blast. We're 10 years later, we still have not recouped, not even half of it. But we learned a lot. And what I've learned that I really enjoyed the process of creating and collaborating. And because it's really, you know, like one of the reasons I love sports is, you know, besides the competition, it's that kind of the team and how you play off each other and how you kind of know your strengths and their strengths and how, you know, and so it was, I really enjoyed that kind of camaraderie and staying up late and doing things. And so when we came back, we thought it was a pretty good movie until we saw it, but it's like, oh, this was great. We should do this again. And we're like, all right, we should, and let's consider it, but let's do it higher budget. So we actually have assistants and we don't have to go sleepless nights and all that stuff. Because I had my law firm operating at a full force, and that I can't go off for weeks at a time and do this. Like, I took like almost like a vacation to go and do that. But I can't do that, 4 times a year or, for long periods of time. And so I said, okay. And, as you kind of set that intention, and within a short period of time, he calls me back. He says, there is a film that BBC in UK is looking to partner up on, and they're looking for a co-finance and co-production partners. And so that kind of fit the bill of, we're not going to do it on our own. So we're going to learn from someone who's been doing it for a long time. We're not fully financing it. So there's most of the money was coming from them, in fact. And we will learn, and it'll be an experience, and it's a bigger production. It's got all the rings and bells. And so we kind of very quickly said yes. And then kind of figure out, like, oh shit, what do we do? We're in now. Right. We're in now. So, so go off and, partner up with the production company in UK to actually do the, cameraman and all that stuff on the ground operations, and make the film. Come back, not make much out of it. And then we find out that we were nominated for British, they're called BAFTAs, British Oscars for kids movies. We're like, are you serious? Like, and I'm aware of this was the right place, right time, right project. It wasn't something that we've created and birthed, but it was exciting. So, wow. And then we got nominated for Broadcast Award, which is their Golden Globes.
Wow.
And then shortly after, we found out we're nominated for Emmys, for kids Emmys. Very first one, actually, their state that launched the very first kids Emmys awards. And excited, we flew out to the BAFTAs. We didn't win the BAFTAs or the broadcast, but we ended up winning very first Emmys.
Okay.
And so, as you win an Emmy award, we're like, okay, we're like a company now.
Yeah.
We start getting phone calls. We got an agent.
Doors start to open,
we got
right?
Projects. We got, funding coming in. And so we had to very quickly organize and set up a company. And we're like, all right, this is a business now. It's not a kind of just let's go out and have fun and lifestyle kind of thing. So as we start doing that, and then as you form a company, then for me and for my partners as well, the entrepreneurial thing clicks in now. All right, so how do we move forward, and how do we build this, and how do we scale this, and how do we take this from where it is to the next level? And for me, making movies, it's an amazing process. It's a creative process. It's a rewarding process. It's extremely challenging and difficult process. And each movie you make, it's like starting a new business. It's new location, new team, new budget, new funding, new challenges, everything. So it's hard to scale it and take one, and because each time it's like you're starting a new business. It's not even like a restaurant where you open a franchise.
No, it's a new entity.
You open a restaurant, then you open a body shop, and then you open a, whatever, different thing, pool cleaning service. And so each one's different. And so we're like, how do we even scale this? And how do we like make it work without us? Because at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, your goal should be, you shouldn't be a business operator. You should be a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
So you should be working in the business. You should be working on the business, and the business should be working without you. And it should be scaling. And so we're looking at it, and it's like, where's the system? You have to have a system. So then you can multiply and grow. It's like, where's the system here? There isn't really a system, because it's just each one is like its own little thing. And so we start kind of looking at the entertainment industry as a whole, and where we can fit in and build a business model around. You know, and making movies is great, and we thought, you know, we'll still do that as a creative process and as something that we want to do. But if you want to also build a company, because it's called entertainment business, it's not just entertainment, right? And so there's a business aspect of it. And so we start lending money. So we became kind of loan sharks to the industry, where we're lending money to films that would run out of funds before the film is finished.
Okay. And then you partner with them. So
what we do is not necessarily partner with them. We would take the film as collateral and give them a high interest short-term loan for them to finish, whether it's finished shooting or most of the time finish post-production, whether it's, you know, sound and color correction and editing and, you know, all that post that goes in that costs money.
Just like the real estate world, right? They need that. Yeah.
Exactly.
If
you
you're
know,
going
you
to
build the house and do everything else, and then all the little details and little, you know, sinks and switches and all that stuff that people sometimes run out of funding and don't do. And so, so we're like, all right, that's something we could scale and grow. And so we start doing them. And we developed a system where it has to have a certain number of pre-sales and some, you know, tax credits where we kind of recoup. And if we take the film collateral, how much are we lending based on the budget, and what percentage of, you know, it's a $5 million film. Okay, we'll lend whatever, let's say $500,000 to it. And worst case scenario, we know we can, you know, we'll talk to the distributor. We'll say, hey, if this film is in this condition, whatever, or once it's done, we'll at least recoup 500 plus whatever our interest was, right? Like, let's say at least 10% or 12% back. Will we get it? And so, we came up with the list, and at that point we had an agent. So he started kind of going out there and bringing us films that were in financial trouble. So we did several of them, and those did well, and we never actually lost money doing that. The problem was there wasn't enough films that qualified met the requirement, because there's a reason they fall in trouble.
Yep.
And because they're mismanaged, or the investor pulls out the funds because he sees it's not going anywhere, or it's not coming out the way it should be. And so again, we came up against the wall where, well, we can't really scale this. Yeah, we could do like 2-3 a year. We'll make some money without really working much. But it's going to be, that's all it's going to be. So, and that wasn't good enough. So we said, okay, what's next? Let's look at other areas of the same industry and what we can do. And so as we start looking at, you know, anything from initial, you know, buying life rights and optioning certain things, to developing scripts, to production, to post-production, to, you know, release, distribution, theatrical, and everything else, distribution kind of jumped out to us. And it jumped out because you have a finished product that you could look at before you even decide what you're going to pay for or if you're going to buy. Because when you invest in a film initially, no matter what it is, you don't know how it's going to look and how it's going to come out, you know. So you have a finished product. You are last money in and then the first money out. So the cycle, looking at as an investor, or for our investors, your money is in for a shorter period of time, and it's in first position. And it's in first position, last position going in. So there's no other money going after you to be in front of you. And then it's a first position coming out. First money coming out comes back to you plus your interest and then some. So it seemed like it fit. And then there's plenty of content, right? And so we positioned ourselves right under the studios. So obviously we cannot compete with studios, but the films that the studios did not pick up, either it came out a little soft, or they have too many of those genres and they're not looking for it right now, or for whatever reason there was an issue, that's where we would be. And so we start going out to festivals and other places looking for films. And again, interesting enough, some industries and this industry as well, it has a lot of creative people and creative, your right and left brains.
Yep.
And so a lot of them are not so business oriented rather than creative, and would get pitched, projects like, oh, this is so great. And I was like, yes, but who's your target audience? Who are you making it for? Who's going to buy this film or watch you? Like, it doesn't matter, but it's such an amazing story. It's like, yeah, but if nobody sees it, nobody watches it, what does it matter? Or you're looking at the script, there's the locations, and there's like, what is the budget going to look like? How are you going to recoup this? Like, I don't care about the recoupment. It's like, your investor might care about that,
Yes,
does he know, about how you feel about his money? Yes. And do you want him to invest again, or do you want, and so it's interesting to see how, that the creativity and the business side of it sometimes don't align. So we'd go in there, and our thing was, we're not going to start, rule number one, we're not going to get into bidding wars. So if there's a film that we like, we'll make a fair offer. But if as soon as it gets into, somebody's overbidding, we'll just step back. Yep. Let them have it. Yep. There's enough content out there. Because we've seen people get carried away and end up getting something that, you get emotionally involved, and it should be just business. And we also saw that there's a lot of great films that don't get purchased during the festivals. So very quickly we learned that we shouldn't be buying films during the festival, because at that time there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of hope, and the prices tend to be unreasonable. And the producers are, and very often it's interesting, when the critics like the film, commercially sometimes it doesn't do well. And then when they trash it commercially, it does well, right? Look at a lot of the big blockbusters, and look at the kind of official critics and what they've thought about it, and then look at the box office, and then vice versa. Yep. And so we would wait, and then after the festival is over, where they're now panicking, it's like, oh my God, we didn't get an offer, and the investors calling is like, we need to sell this film, we need our money back. And now all of a sudden the stock's going down, and they don't know what to do, and maybe there's not so many good reviews, and then we'd go in and save the film and get a good deal for it as well. And again, the key there is, as a good conscious entrepreneur, not to take advantage of these people, because they've put in their sweat, tears, blood into this film. A year or a year and a half, and sometimes longer. And you want to make a fair offer, and you want to do it well with the picture, because a lot of our films, producers bring us their next film and the next film. And so it's okay to make a little less on this film, because all of a sudden now they're bringing in another film. So you have a chance to make a lot more than what you would have made from the first film by taking advantage of and really squeezing them. And so being fair to the other side makes wonders. It's interesting. About last time I calculated, about 20 to 25% of my business clients come from the other side of the aisle. When I negotiate, let's say I'm buying a business for a client, or selling a business, or doing dealings with the other side, after it's done, they'll reach out and say, hey, will you handle our next deal? Or will you represent us now that there's no conflict? Because they see how you fight for your client. And so another lesson for entrepreneurs is, as you're presenting your client or you're presenting your side, it's marketing. You're always marketing to the other side and to the other people, because this is how you're showing up to them. I represent a lot of influencers, like Instagram influencers, as they do like private label deals. And so I was negotiating a bathing suit line deal actually for these two twin sisters, influencers, and negotiating with the company who was going to do the private label, and back and forth. And after it was done and signed, now they're sending me their clients saying, like, can you fight for our clients like you're fighting for your clients? And so as you're doing your job, know that this is your business card, this is your commercial, this is your advertisement. Rather than spending it, and throwing money on just marketing, just invest more into your existing clients and business and dealings, and it will come back. And the same thing with the film.
Show up with that pure intention, right? And here's the other thing. I gotta kind of add this in because it's so beautiful. What you said, look, here's a fact of life. The fact of life, indisputable, is if it's not a win-win, it's not long-term. It's not the long game, right? It's not. And again, you might not make as much on this one, but it's going to come back tenfold when the intention is pure. Again, you're going back to letting the universe do the heavy lifting, right? And it comes back to that pure intention and self-awareness, right? Who you are, what are your core values, and are you surrounding yourself with those core values?
Right. And if it's not win-win, then it's not going to last anyway.
It's short term.
It's not long term. It's short term.
It's a short game.
The other side's gonna There's no balance.
It really so I think that's if there's a lesson to leave with that is it's got to be a win-win, right? It's got to be. And I'm a big believer in a trifecta, right? A triple win. So if it's a winner for the investor, if it's a winner for the writer, the producer, and all that, right? And now, if it's a winner for the audience, it's a no-brainer.
That's it.
It's a no-brainer, right? Yeah. So, and again, that goes back to understanding, right? You're asking them who is your audience, who can we go after, who is interested in something like this, right? And then so I'm such a big believer that life just seems to always be made up of trifectas. I'm a big believer in this. It's motivation, inspiration, and perspiration. And if it's done in those three, you're always going to win. And that's something for a whole nother show. But so where is Ketchup Entertainment right now?
So interesting enough. So just real quick. So as we start distributing films, we partner up with the company that was doing some of our fulfillment, DVDs and shipments and at that point we had about maybe 12 or 13 films. Okay. And they're collecting our incoming revenue, Redbox, Netflix, whatever, Amazon, iTunes, and taking the percentage, and the rest was coming into us. And then something happened and they went insolvent. And they took over $2 million of our earned money and our investors' money with them and sunk. And we kind of hit the wall.
How long ago?
This was probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And so that was our first big test, and up until then, we're operating for probably about 4 or 5 years at that point, and we hadn't taken $1 out of the company because each partner had their own business, other businesses the deal was, let's just reinvest in the film company and let it grow and let it, and so eventually, so we don't need outside investors, you could just kind of self-fund and everything else. And so at that point, we still had investors and a couple of big investors. And so they took the big chunk and not only that, but they also, the films where they were attached to the films as well as our sub-distributors. So as they went down and their lawsuits, and because it wasn't just us, they were dealing with a lot of companies and big studios and everything else. And so it just got messy and chaos ensued, right? And so now we are here. We don't want to borrow any more new money to do new deals until we sort out through the mess. Our money's tied up in there. Our films are tied up in there. And so we hit that first wall, and it's like, shit, reality. Like, what do we do now? And took a long time, and we had to initiate a lawsuit, and we got a judgment. Unfortunately, can't collect for that judgment, but but we had to, because of the films we had and the producers and everyone involved, we had to go after that and at least make the effort, which just that alone cost us a couple of $100,000 just to do that. But again, so we had to regroup. We said, okay, so one option is file bankruptcy, which everyone expected us to do because it's understandable. It's not our fault. He went there. But we looked at it's like, we should have maybe done it differently. We've learned a lesson. Let's move on. At that point we decided we're not going to take outside money anymore. We're gonna figure this out, and we need to first pay everyone back. And so we decided not to file bankruptcy. We said, okay, we're just gonna track on. Let's pull our films back out of there as soon as possible, and then just place them and do it. And an opportunity came in where a bigger company came in and was picking up some of their bigger clients, like studios that they were working with them, and they picked us as well. They said, hey, we're setting up. We'll do all the same stuff for you guys, and we're big. They're affiliates of a bigger, a subsidiary of a bigger company, and very well funded, and really had a great team. We met with the team, and I said, okay, this looks like a good solution to it. So pulled the films out, put it in there. We started acquiring new films, putting through them, and they start growing so fast. And that within a year and a half, they filed bankruptcy. They went too fast and hit the wall.
Really? With all the funding and everything?
All the funding.
It was mismanagement?
It's hard to tell because I wasn't part of their insight process and management. They had a very knowledgeable CEO that had experience running some publicly traded companies. And I think they start acquiring other companies, and they wanted to become just the player. And I think they just went too fast. And I think, people don't value cash flow enough. They pay attention to a lot of the accounts receivable and purchase orders. And, we have an order here. Yeah, but when is it coming? Is it coming? Is there a cash flow to get you through today and this month and next 3 months?
And margins, right?
Margins,
and
right.
margins.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
So, they bankruptcy. And again, all our films in there, there's a bunch of money in there as well that went with it.
Okay.
So we're like within probably a year and a half or so, another slap. And we're just sitting there like, are you serious? Like not, again, like in this situation again, now even deeper in, more films. And now it's, the other company didn't even file for bankruptcy because they just went insolvent, and they did some funny stuff that came out in court later, but there's not much we can do at this point. But these guys legitimately filed for bankruptcy. And so our films are stuck in BK court now in Delaware. So again, it took us about a year. So for a year, Ketchup was not doing any business. No new films. The old films were stuck.
You were in limbo. You were in limbo.
Limbo. And so again, we had to hire an attorney over there, sort through, pull the films back out. And so now we're doing it ourselves. We've kind of brought in a salesperson. And so we've learned, and we've, changed the operation and everything else. But it's been up and down, and up until, again, now we're back, and we partner up after that. We partner up with 20th Century Fox for bigger films that, to do with them and through them. And that contract, I think, is running out soon. And so we're looking at some potential other studios to partner up with. But we had a 3-year contract with them. And we have a film coming out right now, probably in about 2 months. We're looking at a pretty large library that's going to, hopefully, if it works out, come out we're going to release them in Canada, about slate of about 20 to 25 films. And we're looking, both distribution and executive producing and distributing. What's great with having a distribution, especially U.S. distribution, U.S. film revenue it does not compare to anything else in the world.
Right.
It's when other people, when you're in festivals, the Cannes Film Festival or something, you're trying to sell a film to France or Italy or to Russia or whatever. First thing is it going to come out in the U.S.? Everyone's looking up in the U.S. And what is U.S. going to do? When is that going to come out? We're looking at this thing where we're looking at numbers where Canadian film market is 10% of the US market. You know, you look at it as a big country, and it's around 10% of you know what films do here. And so it's a big market, and being having that distribution arm to our film company is really helpful, because whether we're making a film or it's somebody else's film, that's how you monetize. You're the gatekeeper to, this is the product, there's the consumer, you're in the middle. And you could be really creative with, how do I market this? How do I get it to them? Who's my target audience? How do I cut the trailer? What does the poster, key art look like? And so you get creative and you know, engage the actors and the cast in this process. Social media, like we had a film documentary called Linsanity about Jeremy Lin, the basketball player. He played at Knicks and Houston and LA at some point. Great, inspiring story. He's first of all an amazing guy. I've met him in person, just down to earth, really. And the film is about, he's the first Asian American NBA player. And extremely smart. He went to Harvard University, but his passion was basketball. Basketball and faith. His family is very Christian, and so church and faith and God was a big part of it. And so the story is about his struggles as a, you know, no one took him seriously because he's this Asian kid, and he kind of doesn't fit the mold, and he's not picked in teams, and he's on the bench a lot, and he gets, you know, he does well, but he's still struggling through, and college and NBA, he doesn't get drafted, and then the team, and to a point where when the Linsanity, the insanity with Jeremy Lin hit when he was playing for New York, he was staying at his teammate's couch and doing his own laundry. He's a very humble guy and just very inspirational. And so the film was playing at Sundance and great reviews, and many distribution companies wanted it. And so we go in, and instead of throwing more money, we're like, okay, how do we appeal to this, and so that they could go with us, a smaller company. And so we focused on the film rather than on the amounts. Like, okay, you know, there's a story here about an Asian American who is persevering and you know, dealing with certain, you know, discrimination and everything else. There's an interesting story there. There's a story about faith and God and how that drives him and helps him get through the obstacles and challenges that just nothing seems to faze him, and as he just gets slapped around and pushed around. And then there is a sports story of this athlete who knows how to play, but you know, and so we're like, all right, the marketing should be 3 different marketing campaigns. You know, one, we're going after the Asian American community and get their support and because they're interested. And then we're going with faith-based community, because this is also a story about somebody who has faith and believes in God. There's also a sports story, you know, so the sports story, and so, you know, ESPN picked it up. And so it's being creative, and how do you know, who's your target audience and how do you get to them, you know, and is this, you know, these people live in mostly social media and Facebook, and these are, you know, churches and Christian bookstores, and you know, how do you get to them? And some of it also, we let it play for free in high school gymnasiums and stuff for students, just to see and get inspired. And because he's really a great role model, and talk about the film, and you know, and so you get creative. And so it's interesting how you even if you're not making the film, you could still get creative on what you do with the film and how you get it out there. And so yeah, so we're back, and we are, you know, for the last year we've released, this is going to be our 3rd film. We have a couple of more in the works, and again, we're still recouping from the damage of the first 2 insolvencies.
Yeah.
And this is the reality of it. And, you know, and they say, you know, generally you expect your company as you start, you know, within 3 to 5 years to start, you know, break even and start seeing money, and, you know, maybe even exit 5 to 7 years. And this is going to be almost 10 years. And we had those setbacks, which set us back. And we've chosen to go forward because one, we really enjoy it. Second, we have responsibility to our investors that we don't want to let them down, and we're now down to just one, and that's about 30% of what it was, and so we'll be down this year, and then hopefully the rest will be. The upside of it is because we persevered, because we went through all this stuff and figured out a way to pay everybody back. We've in this process built a company that's now worth something.
Yes.
And that now that once everyone's paid, because we still haven't taken any salary until the last dollar is paid to the investor. But once it is, all that money that we're using paying hopefully will come to us, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so again, you sometimes you fold and you walk away. And maybe if we didn't have investors, it would have been easier just to fold and then start again or not go there anymore. I think it was both the blessing and blessing in disguise, where it's like, well, because a lot of these investors, they become like friends, they're friends actually, and
Yes.
they're
Yes.
people and people who trust you with this. And whether it's my fault or somebody else's, I had nothing to do with the bankruptcy or the insolvency, but that's not their problem. They gave, I decided to go with this company. Whatever happened to this company, maybe I could have done better, and I should have done better. And so now because of that, we stuck around. And because of that, now we're back up and running and growing. And now we have actually a couple of really big opportunities that I can't disclose yet, but hopefully this year will come out where it will make things go a lot faster and a lot better. So, but it just shows an example of, you learn, and up to that point, I've probably had about a dozen companies, and entertainment was new to me, and I think one thing that I underestimated is that technical knowledge, because I figured, I know business, I know this, I know that. I'll go in and the details I'll figure out. I should have done a little more research. Should have, and so you learn from that. Yeah. And you learn about, some certain taking certain security measures and everything else. And so as much as you think, each venture you go into, you get slapped around. And so again, 10 years of working, and even as we start making money, we've worked in this company for 10 years, 3 partners, and we haven't taken any money. Yeah. And so and our money is actually in there as well still. Yeah. And so I could say that I'm still losing money in this company, even though the company's making money and we're moving ahead and it's getting better and better. But that's one of my ventures, and we're attached to it. We've made a commitment that we're going to see it through to the other side. And what that looks like, I don't know. It's been an interesting venture. The most rewarding thing has been that we as partners, in this 10 years haven't had one argument, and not a single finger point, not a single I'm walking away. I don't. That
says it. That says so much. And here's why here's why I jump right on that. Right, is because business partners that I've dissected and inside and out was the purchase of the UFC back in 2001 with the Fertitta brothers and Dana White, right, for $2 million. And then they're a few years in, and all of a sudden they're 44 million in the red, right? So Fertitta brothers have 80%, right? They're the investors, and Dana has 10%, right? Both of them, Lorenzo Fertitta and Dana White, in multiple interviews at multiple times, both said not one time did anybody point a finger, right? Now you fast forward the clock, and they sold in 2017 for $4.7 billion, okay? Amazing. So they both said at different times, not one time did anybody point the finger on 44 million in the red, and not one time did anybody say, well, we're $3 billion, we're evaluated of $3 billion, and this is my company. So by here's what here's what people have to get from this story, Vahan, that you just shared. This is what's going to separate somebody from taking that leap or going back into safety. You ready? What you shared, Vahan, is never, ever, ever give up the power of you being able to define what success and failure is. When you keep that power, you are the one that gets to say, is this successful? What's my definition of success at this time, right? At this moment, versus the definition of failure. And just by you saying that your partners went through all these struggles, went through this chaos, right?
Yeah.
And not one time did you point a finger. I am promising you this. You are more successful than the majority of the companies out there that might look successful from the outside. Exactly. That's just the truth. That's a fact, right? Yeah. So when people are going, wait a minute, they're 10 years in, they're this much in debt, they were going to go bankrupt, and they hit this and they hit that. The bottom line is you always get to determine what is success and what is failure. And I went through that with my restaurant, right? I went through that with, on the outside, everyone's going to say you failed. But here's how I define it, Vahan, is when I said, you know what, I had no investors, it was just me, right? Still have my fire restoration business. Nice. And when I decided to close the doors, here's what I did. People go, how did you bounce back? How did you get back up and wipe yourself off so quickly? Here's what I did. I literally did this, Vahan. I looked in the mirror and I said, and I can only answer this, right? Nobody else can. Yeah. If I didn't do this, would I regret it? If my answer was yes, I won. My answer was yes, I won. Now I can move on, right? Yeah. So that's what people have to understand is you are the one that puts a definition on success and failure. You're the one that puts that into the right context. And you're the only one that can do that because you're in it. Yeah. Right? You're in the weeds. Yeah. Right? You are in the weeds. Yeah. So just by you sharing that with me, that you guys never pointed fingers, you were already successful tenfold. That's what now it's just a matter of aligning, right? Now it's just a matter of letting the universe do the heavy lifting. Yes. But that's what people have to understand about your story, right? Is you get to determine, you get to define. Never let anybody put a title on you. You get to define what success and failure is. So kudos, man.
You also get to decide what you focus on.
Yes.
Do you focus on a solution or on the problem?
Yes.
Do you just sit back and say, those scumbags took advantage of us, or those people mismanaged, or did this and did that, and poor me. Mm-hmm. And now because of that, my life is ruined? Or, okay, here we are. Yep. This is the facts. This is what we're facing. Where do we go from here? What can we do? What's our next step?
Love it.
What's the best next step?
And this, Vahan, right, that you already said a few times. Mm-hmm. What could I have done better? Yeah. Right? As a leader, right? What people ask me all the time when I speak from stage, we talked about this, we laughed about it. I crash a business to the ground. That's all they want to know, right? What business did you crash to the ground? Not the three that you built and sold, right? What did you crash to the ground and why? And I simply said this. I thought I had the people and the systems to enhance my weaknesses, and I found out very quickly that I didn't. Mm-hmm. That I didn't, right? Mm-hmm. So again, what can I do better, right? Or in this circumstance, right? Because you have a team, you have partners. We and I are the same thing when you have partners. Yeah. I love it, man.
It's what you focus on, and it's taking responsibility, not blame, but responsibility of, here we are. We've made number of decisions that has gotten us here. Mm-hmm. We can't control other people. We can't control what they've done and what decisions they've made, but our decisions that we've mutually made has got us here. Now, how do we get out of here? And how do we do it that we don't end up in a place like this again? And so again, failing forward, trying and again, it doesn't mean you don't feel frustrated sometimes. Doesn't mean you don't feel like, you think about, oh man, we could have been in a whole different ballpark and everything else. But who says we can't? And this is what's driving us, is like, it's almost now become like, because you have to also look at the whole thing as a game. You learn the rules and you play the game. And so it's kind of like one of those things like, okay, we've come this far. There's no way I'm hanging my, we're going to figure this out, and we're going to come out on the other side. We're going to make this 10 years count. And now we're just having fun, and we're doing things not out of this kind of desperation or stress or something, but, and we laugh about it and we remember the good times. And now we're kind of back to, back on our feet and hopefully wiser and stronger and a lot leaner. And so, for example, the lockdown and pandemic hasn't really affected, it's affected the production side of it, but not much the distribution side of it, And so again, you learn and if you could take responsibility, because as soon as you take that victim mentality, you give up that power to do anything. Then it's off your hands. That if it's not your fault, then you can't, fix it. And so say, okay, we've screwed up. They did what they did, but we've made this number of decisions that got us here. So let's not focus on that. Let's focus on take the lessons and what do we go from here? What's the best thing for our company and for us as partners to decide to go to the next level? And, and you do one thing at a time. Yeah, you do have those projections. You do have the plan and everything else. And then you pivot. The entertainment industry, film specifically, went through what music industry went through a while back, from DVDs, and we felt it. We had a period where we were selling DVDs, million DVDs for a film with Paul Walker. We had, and then it went down to 500 for another film, and then 200,000 for another film, and then all of a sudden we're left with like extra DVDs. We don't know what to do, and we had to, destroy them. And then that whole business pretty much disappeared. There's still some business in there, but
it's all
not
digital.
Significant.
Yeah.
And then you look at opportunities. Now there's more pay-per-view and more this and more that. So when you're lean and when you're ready to and willing to pivot and make those quick changes and adapt, as a small company, that actually gives you an advantage. The bigger companies, they're so structured and they're invested,
Yes.
And so look at this disruption that's coming. Look at the change that's coming. Because a lot of small companies, they're complaining about that. It's like, man, this industry is constantly changing and it's hard to keep up with it. And you don't, everything gets disrupted. And just like as you figure something out, and then something else comes out, and true. But at the same time, as a small company, how more advantageous it is for you, and quickly you can adjust to that, and instead of a studio who's got departments and payrolls and HR and it might take a couple of years, and for you it might take a month or two, and take advantage of that, jump in there, and so use your what seemed to be disadvantage to your advantage. We that's how we used to sell ourselves in, when we try to buy a film and we're competing against a bigger studio or a bigger, like, Weinstein had a distribution company before this whole thing came out. And they would ask us, like, why will we go with you guys, a smaller, newer company, than with them? It's like, because you are going to be our only film this quarter. And guess how much work we're going to put into that? And how much thought and energy we're going to put in, and we're going to make sure that it gets released, because if that film doesn't get released this quarter, we have no revenue. Versus he's picking up about 15 films from this festival. Your film might end up on a shelf for the next 3 quarters, and he might release it, he might not release it, he might just throw it in a conveyor belt. Again, and it's the truth. We're not, and we've had situations where the film would go somewhere else, and then we'd have a conversation like, yeah, it's still not out yet. I don't know. They own the film. There's nothing I can do. And so in this case, yeah, we're smaller, we have less budget, but that played to our advantage, and we pick it up. So think outside the box as an entrepreneur. How can you use your weakness as your strength, as your selling point?
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
And market. You know, people think about marketing as something they do outside to the outside world. Think of even everything how you do and what you do as marketing. You know, we have people bring in, you know, we have employees bringing in our cases and referring cases and doing this because they know internally how are you doing it. So you know, it's not just the shiny outside. Make sure that shine, you clean your inside of your car, not just the outside of your car, right?
Yeah,
you're the inside. You're the one driving. That's more important.
And here's what's interesting, right? What you said, and so there is the marketing, but the real foundation is, what is your brand, right? What are you all about? And I think so many people overlook that, right? They think marketing, which is so important, right? So it's almost like, I look at it as like this, like marketing is like motivation, right? It's the outside. Branding is inspiration, right? Comes from here, right? It comes from here, and then nothing happens without perspiration, right?
I like that.
So because that's where, again,
makes sense.
That's where that foundation is. That's what really counts. And think about this. Your brand, you and your partner's brand is so strong that you didn't point fingers. See, that's the core. That's what people want. That's what people want to partner with, right? I want to know, man, when it hits the fan, these guys don't, you know, they're here, they're there, right? It's they come.
No,
it's the truth, but it's the truth. And that's all. My branding absolutely means something to me. So my pit bull is in everything that I do, because I believe that every human being should strive to be what a good pit bull is. And a good pit bull is courageous, loyal, do or die, with a huge heart.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
That's what I believe every human being should strive to be. So, man, dude, you guys, it's just a matter of letting it unfold, because you have that foundation. You have that brand loyalty to yourselves, and then everything else. So it's so nice to hear that story. It is. It truly is. It's so refreshing to hear that. No finger pointing. All right, wipe ourselves off. Let's figure it out and let's move forward. And that's what I want everyone to get from this, is that's the key. And you have the ability and the power to put it in your own context, right? Yep. It's all about your own context. Nobody else understands that, because you guys are in the trenches. So, man, listen, that's the golden egg right now, right? Is you have that foundation. I love that, man. So, man, we're still gonna somehow, some way, I'm gonna get you back on here, man, because this is gold. No, it really is, because it's the real deal. So, man, I want to thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate for providing the platform, and
it's a flow, my man. It's a flow. I love that. And then we're going to be getting this out there. We'll throw it up on our channel. Anybody that's getting value from this, go to our channel, share, like, subscribe. You know the whole deal, man. Get it out there. We're going to break up so many clips. Fernando is going to have a field day with these clips.
Say hi to Fernando.
Yes.
It's funny that since we did the first one, and I kind of already knew that, how we kind of just go in the flow, and we just kind of. And so I was scheduling for 1 hour. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna put out 2 hours just in case, because I know how we can kind of get going back and forth.
It's the energy.
Sure enough, it's almost 2 hours.
It's the energy. So I want to thank you for again taking the time and being that vulnerable, right? And knowing that your vulnerability becomes your credibility, right? Because now we found out that there's really something behind that brand, right? That really means something. It's not the Hollywood set where you open the door and and there's nothing behind it.
Right.
No, but that's what people have to get. So huge. And we wouldn't know that unless you were able to be vulnerable, right? And share that. So that's courageous, my man. Hats off. Guys, thank you so much. And we will see you on the next video, on the next episode. Stay tuned. We're going to bring it to you real, raw, and live, Monster Motivator style, baby. Ah!